The cold Ohio rain hammered against the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church as I stood beside Grandma's casket, my heart pounding with unspoken pain. Ariella, not one word about Delilah or your lifestyle, Mom, hissed, her fingers digging into my arm like a vice. This day is for honoring her, not for your selfish truths. I swallowed hard, the words burning in my throat as relatives filed past offering condolences, their eyes flicking over me with that familiar mix of pity and judgment. In the small town of Willow Creek, everyone knew everyone, and whispers traveled faster than the storm outside. I had driven 4 hours from Columbus last night alone because bringing Delilah would have been impossible. Mom had made that clear on the phone 2 days earlier after the hospital called with the news of Grandma's passing at 82. I clutched the program in my hands, the printed photo of Grandma smiling in her garden, the one place she always said felt like heaven on earth. My mind raced back to summers spent there picking tomatoes and listening to her stories about growing up during the Depression times when people stuck together no matter what. She never asked about my dating life, but her knowing glances when I mentioned friends had always felt like quiet acceptance. Now here I was at her funeral, forced to bury not just her but a part of myself too. The service began with the organ playing a somber hymn and Pastor Reynolds stepping to the pulpit. I sat between Mom and my sister Evelyn, who kept shooting me warning looks, her husband and 2 kids on her other side. Dad sat stoic as ever, staring straight ahead, his hands folded in his lap like he was praying for strength to endure this day without incident. As the eulogy started, I felt Mom's grip tighten again on my knee. Don't you dare, Ariella, she whispered under her breath. I nodded numbly, my eyes fixed on the casket draped in white roses, the same kind Grandma grew in her backyard. The pastor spoke of her kindness, her faith, her devotion to family, and I wondered if he knew how that faith had sometimes felt like chains for me. Growing up in Willow Creek, being different was not an option. Church every Sunday, youth group lock-ins, all designed to keep us on the straight and narrow path. I had left for college in the city, telling myself I would figure it out there. And I did meet Delilah at a teachers' conference 2 years ago, her warm smile and sharp wit pulling me in like gravity. We kept it quiet at first, stolen weekends in Columbus, late night calls, but Grandma had visited once unannounced and seen a photo of us on my phone. She had smiled softly and said, some loves are worth the fight, honey, without pressing further. Now she was gone and the fight felt heavier than ever. The congregation stood for a hymn, and I rose mechanically, my voice barely a whisper as we sang Amazing Grace. I scanned the pews, seeing old neighbors, the bakery owner who always gave me extra cookies as a kid, the librarian who recommended books on strong women, all of them here to mourn but none knowing the storm inside me. After the final amen, the pallbearers, including my uncle and cousins, carried the casket out into the rain, umbrellas blooming like dark flowers around us. Mom pulled me close under hers, her perfume mixing with the wet earth smell. Don't embarrass us, Ariella, she said again, her voice low but sharp. This is not the time or place. I nodded again, biting my lip until I tasted blood. As we followed the procession to the graveside, the rain soaked my black coat and I shivered, not just from the cold but from the weight of the secret pressing down on my chest. Delilah had texted me that morning, I love you, be strong, I'm here if you need me, waiting at the hotel just outside town. I had replied with a simple heart emoji, unable to say more. The graveside service was brief, Pastor Reynolds committing Grandma's body to the ground, and as the first shovelful of dirt hit the casket I felt a tear slip down my cheek, mixing with the rain. Mom squeezed my hand harder, her nails digging in a silent reminder. I glanced across the crowd and caught Evelyn's as she mouthed behave, her face tight with the same disapproval she had shown when I came out to the family 5 years ago at 23. They had prayed over me, begged me to repent, sent me to counseling, but I had stood firm then. Now standing here I wondered if firmness was just another word for selfishness. The service ended and people began to disperse, offering hugs and promises of prayers at the house. Later for the reception I lingered by the grave for a moment, alone, or as alone as I could be, with Mom hovering nearby. Ariella, let's go, she said, tugging my arm. We have to get to the house before everyone else. I followed numbly, climbing into the family SUV, the leather seats cold against my damp clothes as we drove through the familiar streets of Willow Creek, past the diner, the high school, the park where I had played as a kid. I felt the walls closing in. Delilah was my anchor, my reason for smiling through the hard days, but here in this town she was a ghost I could not name. The house was already filling with people when we arrived, casseroles and flowers covering every surface. Aunt Linda pulled me into a hug, her eyes searching mine. You look so thin, honey, she said. Grandma would want you to eat. I forced a smile, murmuring thanks, and escaped to the kitchen where Evelyn was arranging plates. Her voice was low when she cornered me later. Ariella, I know this is hard, but for Dad's sake and Mom's, please just keep it together today. No one needs to know about your friend. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat, wondering how long I could keep swallowing the truth before it choked me. The afternoon dragged on with stories shared, laughter mixed with tears, and me standing on the edge of every conversation, careful not to slip. The rain continued outside, mirroring the storm inside me as I checked my phone again. Delilah's message, I miss you already. How is it going? I typed back, it's hell, but Managing love you, then deleted it quickly when Mom walked by later. As the crowd thinned, Mom pulled me aside in the hallway, her face lined with exhaustion. And something harder, Ariella. Grandma left specific instructions for the will reading tomorrow at the lawyer's office in town. We all need to be there at 10 sharp, and I expect you to act like the granddaughter she raised, respectful and proper. I nodded again, my stomach twisting at the thought of what tomorrow might bring. Little did I know that the lawyer's words would crack open everything we were trying to bury. The next morning dawned gray and heavy, the rain having eased to a drizzle as I drove to the lawyer's office alone, Mom and Dad following in their car, Evelyn and her family in another. I had slipped out early telling them I needed coffee, but really I needed air to breathe without the weight of their expectations. Delilah had called from the hotel, her voice soft and steady. You don't have to do this alone, Ariella. If it gets too much, just say the word, it'll be right there. I had smiled into the phone, wishing I could reach through it and hold her, but I can't risk it. Not today, I whispered back. I love you though, more than anything. The office of Harlan and Associates was a modest brick building on Main Street, the kind of place that had handled wills and deeds in Willow Creek for generations. Mr. Harlan, a tall man in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, greeted us at the door, his expression somber. Please come in, the family room is ready. He led us to a wood-paneled room with leather chairs arranged around a long table. Mom sat first, smoothing her skirt, Dad beside her, Evelyn across from me, her eyes avoiding mine. I felt the tension thick as the coffee Mr. Harlan poured. Everyone here, he began, opening a thick folder. I see, Ariella, your grandmother was very clear about her wishes, and she left personal notes for each of you. The first mention of my name came softly to my granddaughter. Ariella, I leave my collection of family letters and journals written over the years. She wanted you to have them because she said you always understood the importance of stories untold. I blinked, feeling a rush of warmth mixed with confusion. Grandma had kept journals. I never knew, but the way Mr. Harlan said it with a slight pause made Mom shift uncomfortably in her seat. He continued reading other bequests to Evelyn, the antique silver set, to Dad the old truck, but then the second mention hit to my granddaughter. Ariella, I also leave the lakeside cabin on Willow Lake. It has always been a place of peace, and I trust she will share it with the person who brings her the most joy. The room went silent. Evelyn's head snapped up. Mom gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. What does that mean? She demanded, her voice sharp. Mr. Harlan cleared his throat, adjusting his glasses. Your mother was very specific in her wording. She believed in love in all its forms, and wanted Ariella to know that. The third mention came like a hammer to Ariella, my dear girl, I leave the remainder of my savings in a trust to be used for the life you choose, but only if you live it openly and without shame, as I taught you to be true to yourself. The air left the room. I sat frozen, staring at the table, my name ringing in my ears 3 times, each one heavier than the last. Grandma had known, she had always known, and instead of condemnation she had left me freedom, wrapped in words that now threatened to tear my family apart. Mom stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly. This is ridiculous, she spat. Ariella, what did you do? Did you talk to her behind our backs and fill her head with nonsense? Evelyn leaned forward, her face flushed. You always were her favorite, always whispering in corners. Now this, no one is taking that cabin or that money if it means supporting your choices. Dad remained silent, but his jaw clenched so tight I thought it might break. Mr. Harlan raised a hand calmly. These are legal documents, and your mother's wishes are clear. The trust has conditions that Ariella must meet, but the cabin is hers outright. I felt my world tilt, the internal storm I had held back for days now raging fully. Grandma had seen me, the real me, and instead of forcing silence she had given me a voice from beyond the grave. But at what cost? The argument started immediately in the parking lot after we left the office. Mom turned on me, her eyes blazing. How could you, Ariella, after everything we did to help you, pray for you? This is her final gift and you poisoned it with your lifestyle. I stood there, rain dripping from my hair, the words I had swallowed for years rising up, but I didn't say anything to her. Mom, I whispered, she knew she loved me anyway. Evelyn laughed bitterly, a harsh sound. You expect us to believe that you probably manipulated her in her last days. Delilah, this Delilah that I never even met her, but I know she's the reason you turned away from God. The accusations flew like the drizzle, turning to heavier drops again. I felt each one like a slap, the moral weight of their pain clashing with the love Grandma had shown me in those simple bequests. As we drove back to the house in separate cars, I pulled over on a quiet road and called Delilah, my hand shaking. She picked up immediately. Hey love, how did it go? I broke then, the tears coming hot and fast. Grandma left me everything important, and she knew about us. Delilah, she knew and she approved, but Mom and Evelyn, they're furious. They think I tricked her. The line was quiet for a moment, then Delilah's voice steady and warm. You didn't trick anyone, Ariella. Your grandma saw the truth and she honored it. Now the question is, what are you going to do with that gift? I didn't have an answer, not yet, but the decision was already forming in the cracks of my heart. The price of silence, suddenly too high to pay. The drive home felt endless, the familiar streets now foreign as I replayed Mr. Harlan's words, my name 3 times, each one a call to awaken. As I pulled into the driveway, Mom was waiting on the porch, her arms crossed, the look on her face promising more confrontation. I took a Deep breath, stepping out into the rain knowing that the real storm was just beginning. The confrontation at the house that afternoon stretched into hours, the living room becoming a battlefield of raised voices and old wounds. Mom paced the carpet, her heels clicking like accusations. You will not accept that cabin, Ariella, not if it means parading your sin in front of the whole town. Evelyn nodded from the couch, her kids playing quietly in the next room. We have a reputation here. Dad finally spoke, his voice low but firm. Your grandma was old, confused at the end. That's all this is. I sat on the edge of the armchair, the journals Mr. Harlan had given me in a box at my feet, unopened but heavy with promise. I wanted to scream that Grandma had been sharper than any of us in her final years, but the words stuck, the years of training to stay silent holding me back. Instead I said quietly, she was clear, Mom. She wanted me to be happy. Delilah makes me happy. The name slipped out and the room exploded. Mom stopped, pacing, her face pale. How dare you speak that name in this house? Evelyn stood, her eyes flashing. You see, this is exactly what Grandma would never have wanted if she knew the full truth, but she did know. I shot back, my voice rising for the first time, the internal conflict cracking open like the sky outside. The betrayal in their eyes cut deep, but so did the memory of Grandma's smile, the one that had always made me feel seen. I grabbed the box of journals and retreated to my old childhood bedroom, the one with the faded posters and the quilt Grandma had made. Closing the door, I sank onto the bed, pulling out the first journal, her handwriting neat and steady on the pages. I read until my eyes blurred, entries about family, about faith, and then one dated 2 years ago after Ariella visited last month. I see the light in her eyes when she talks about her friend Delilah. Love is love, my dear, and God made us to love. I closed the book, my heart aching with the confirmation. Grandma had never judged, only loved. But downstairs the family talked in hushed tones, planning how to contest the will, or at least pressure me to renounce the conditions. I heard Evelyn on the phone with the pastor asking for guidance, Mom crying softly to Dad about how I was breaking her heart. The weight of their pain pressed on me, the moral dilemma tearing at my core. Honor Grandma by living openly, or preserve the family by staying hidden? As evening fell, I slipped out the back door, driving to the hotel where Delilah waited. She opened the door, her arms wrapping around me. Immediately the embrace warm and safe. The first real comfort of the day. Tell me everything, she whispered, leading me inside. I did, pouring out the will, the arguments, the journals. Delilah listened, her hand stroking my hair, her presence the anchor I needed. You don't have to choose between us and them, Ariella, she said softly. But I do, I replied, the truth of it hitting hard. The next day brought more tension, the family gathering again at the house for a meeting Mr. Harlan had suggested to discuss the trust conditions. Mom had invited the pastor without telling me, and as we sat around the table, he spoke of forgiveness and repentance, his eyes on me the whole time. Ariella, your grandma was a godly woman. Surely she meant this as a test of your faith. I bit my tongue, the societal prejudice of the town wrapping around me like the rain-soaked air outside. Evelyn added, her voice suggesting I donate the cabin to the church as a gesture of goodwill, the betrayal stinging as my own sister turned the bequest against me. I felt the price of my silence growing, the internal voices screaming that hiding had cost me pieces of myself for years. That night alone in my room, I texted Delilah, I think I'm ready to stop hiding. Her reply was immediate, then I'll be right beside you no matter what. The decision began to solidify, the tension building like the storm that refused to leave Willow Creek. The following morning I woke with a resolve that scared me, the journals stacked on the nightstand like a roadmap to courage. I dressed carefully in jeans and a sweater, the kind Delilah loved, and drove to the lakeside cabin, the one now legally mine. The drive along the winding road brought memories of childhood picnics with Grandma, her laughter echoing as we skipped stones on the water. Now the cabin stood quiet, the key Mr. Harlan had given me cold in my hand. Inside it smelled of pine and old books. Her touch everywhere. I sat at the kitchen table opening another journal, the third mention of my name in her handwriting clear to Ariella. If you are reading this, know that I chose you for these gifts because you have the strength to live truthfully even when it hurts. I closed my eyes, the words fueling the fire in my chest. Back at the house the family had gathered again, this time with Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob, the circle tightening. Mom saw the determination in my face and her voice trembled. Ariella, please think of us, think of your nieces and nephews. What will people say? I stood tall for the first time, the confrontation I had avoided now inevitable. I have thought about it, Mom. Grandma wanted me to be happy and Delilah makes me happy. I'm bringing her to the memorial service next week. The room erupted. Evelyn slammed her hand on the table. You can't be serious, you'll lose everything, the trust, the respect, the family. Dad shook his head, walking out without a word, the silent disapproval heavier than shouts. Mom cried openly, the pain in her eyes a mirror of my own guilt. But beneath it all the awakening stirred. I had paid the price of hiding for too long, the moral choice now clear, even if controversial. Delilah arrived that afternoon, her car pulling up as the family watched from the windows. I met her on the porch, our embrace brief but real, the first public one in Willow Creek. Mom turned away, Evelyn muttered under her breath, About betrayal, the days that followed were a blur of arguments, phone calls from relatives urging me to reconsider, the pastor visiting again with prayers that felt like judgment. I defended my choice each time, the internal conflict easing as the truth took root. But the cost mounted. Evelyn stopped speaking to me completely, her kids no longer running to hug me at visits, dad avoided eye contact. The family unity I had clung to fracturing under the weight of my decision. Yet in the quiet moments with Delilah at the cabin, her hand in mine as we watched the lake, I felt the happiness Grandma had envisioned, the romantic joy, simple and pure, a picnic on the dock, laughter replacing tears. The town whispers grew, but so did my strength, the societal pressure testing every resolve. The betrayal came on a Tuesday when Evelyn called the local paper anonymously, leaking details of the will and my relationship. The headline in the Willow Creek Gazette reading, local heiress challenges family values with controversial inheritance. The phone rang nonstop, relatives disowning me in voicemails, mom showing up at the cabin, her face etched with exhaustion. Ariella, how could you let this happen? The family is divided because of your choices. I stood my ground, the confrontation raw and painful but necessary. I didn't leak it, mom, but I won't hide anymore. Grandma wouldn't want that. Evelyn arrived later, her anger boiling over. You've ruined us, Ariella. The church group is talking. The school where you used to volunteer wants nothing to do with you. The accusations flew, betrayal after betrayal, my own sister outing me publicly to protect what she called family honor. I felt the wound deep, the price of truth higher than I imagined. Delilah held me that night, her voice steady through my tears. You are not alone, we will face this. The moral dilemma peaked as the trust lawyer called, confirming the conditions. If I did not live openly, the funds would revert to the church, a final twist from Grandma forcing my hand. I chose to fight, attending the town hall meeting where residents debated the inheritance, the prejudice laid bare in comments about lifestyle and sin. I spoke, my voice shaking but clear. Grandma taught me love has no conditions and I honor her by living mine. The backlash was immediate, but so was the small support from unexpected places. An old teacher, a cousin who whispered she had always suspected the family fractures widened, dad sending a letter asking for time, mom refusing to answer my calls, the loss aching, but the awakening real. Delilah and I walked the cabin grounds hand in hand, the romantic moments grounding me, the happiness a hard-won reward after the sacrifices. Months passed, the leaves turning gold around the lake as I settled into the cabin, Delilah moving in quietly. The life we built, one of quiet strength and shared dreams. The family remained distant, Evelyn's kids missing birthdays, mom sending back unopened letters, the cost of my choice a constant shadow. Yet in the mirror I saw the woman Grandma had believed in, strong and true. The final confrontation came at the annual family reunion I attended uninvited, standing at the edge of the park as eyes turned. The whispers rose, but I walked to mom, her face a mask of pain. Ariella, she began, but I interrupted softly. I love you, mom, but I love me too, and Delilah too. Grandma showed me the way, the words hung, the tension breaking as she turned away, tears in her eyes. Evelyn glared from across the field, but a few relatives nodded slowly. The seeds of understanding planted, the months of drama had tested every bond, the internal conflicts resolved in the choice to live openly, the betrayals and sacrifices forging a new path. Delilah squeezed my hand later as we drove home, her smile the light that made every price worth it. We sat on the cabin porch that evening, the sunset painting the water gold, the romantic peace settling deep. I thought of Grandma's journals, now read fully, her wisdom guiding me through the moral maze, the controversial decisions no longer weighing but freeing. The town still talked, but my truth stood firm, the psychological scars healing with each honest day. As the stars appeared, I wondered aloud to Delilah if the family would ever fully understand. She kissed my forehead softly, some will, some won't, but you honored the love that mattered most. The journey had been one of deep family pressure, societal judgment, and personal awakening, the actions and decisions shaping not just my life, but the legacy Grandma left me. In those 3 mentions of my name now standing on the other side, the question lingered for all of us, was I right to choose honesty over harmony, or did demanding silence make the family the real ones who lost everything in the end?